The time is now 7 o'clock.
We're constantly talking about the weather and just how hot it is, but what does this summer say about the state of our longtime climate? We used to say that South Korea has 4 distinct seasons, but that may no longer be the case, with summer potentially taking up half of our year in about 70 years, where immediately that affects our food supply. What kind of fish travel around Korea, and what kind of fruits can be grown here? Climate change affects every facet of our lives, and that effect is going to linger far beyond this hot, hot summer. I'm Catherine. This is Morning Wave in Busan on Wednesday, August 28th on befm, 부산영어방송. Good morning, Wavers. I hope you're all doing well. The good news is, at least for me personally, yesterday was the first night where I didn't have to turn on the AC at night. It was bearable with just a fan. So maybe it was just on a personal note, but I'm hoping that we're kind of turning the corner on this extreme heat wave that we've been experiencing. And yes, thus far this summer, we've been greeting each other every morning, just complaining about how hot it's been overnight, but it seems like it's kind of cooling down. But let's actually talk about how hot it has been, not just this summer, but for the past century. For the last 100 years, temperatures over the Korean Peninsula have risen by 1.6 degrees Celsius with hotter and longer summers. And by the way, a technical meteorological summer is when temperatures go over 20 degrees Celsius and kind of just linger there. And these days, the start of this technical summer has been pushed up to late May, and temperatures fall below 20 around late September. So technically, we are living in summer temperatures 4 months of the year, or about a third of the year. And you don't have to tell me or to have me to tell you that the number of tropical nights has gone up. But specifically, it has tripled in the last 100 years. We feel it, right? The thing is that at this rate of carbon emissions, the number of heat wave days, that's going to go up by 10 days, and that is significant. Weather and climate experts say that by the end of this century, 6 months of the year may be summer. 6 months. That is like half the entire year. And so this may be the coolest summer of our lifetime. And that is so sad to say. That scares me. And it's really alarming if you think this summer was hot. Okay, now we're going to get to our text topic for this hump day. So here we go. When you have questions, whether it's about work, school, daily life, who do you turn to, or what do you turn to? Do you turn to a person, or do you look it up? 자, 나는 일하다가, 공부하다가, 살다가 모르는 거 있으면 주변에 물어본다 versus 검색한다. So what do you do? For me, I know what I do. I call my sister. She probably hates it. I call her at least 10 times a day. I bug her to death. My younger sister. 여동생 끊임없이 전화해요. 싫어할 거예요. 저 제보도 더 싫어할 수도 있습니다. I call her so much, it probably bugs her. I'll cut it down to 5 today. So, what do you do when you have questions? Do you look it up, or do you call someone, or do you ask someone? You can send in your messages to BEFM's live stream, live chat on YouTube. So you go to that platform, you search for BEFM or 부산영어방송, and you can subscribe and then log in, chat away with our other waivers, and on your phone, pound 9050. That's going to cost you 101. You can reach me for free on Kakao Talk as well. And the ways you can listen to us or watch us nowadays on the traditional radio dial, 90.5, 103.3 FM. Like I said, on the YouTube platform in real time, or you can watch again later at your leisure. We are also available on the Patbang app. So there are so many different ways you can listen to us nowadays. And looking ahead to our Wednesday morning together, we have Leon coming in for hashtag fact check. We also have Jennifer with Skills 101. And for our special interview, you remember yesterday, if you joined us yesterday, we were talking about ghosts, kind of. Well, today we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts of ghosting. 이건 전혀 다른 거예요. Ghosting, 잠수 타다. Or 잠수 이별. Is there etiquette when you are breaking up with somebody or, trying to break up any type of relationship or, end a relationship? So let's find out about ghosting. That's coming up in hour number 2 with our expert. And I will be back with today's headlines. It is now 7:05. These are today's headlines. Government proposes 677 trillion won budget bill aimed at fiscal prudence. The government yesterday proposed a budget of 677.4 trillion won for 2025 as it seeks to increase welfare spending for vulnerable people and prop up economic growth while ensuring fiscal health. Police to launch intensive crackdown on deep-fake sex crimes. Police will carry out an intensive 7-month crackdown starting today on deep-fake sex images, aggressively hunting down those who produce and spread such images, especially those of children and teenagers. South Korea's population continues to shrink for 4th consecutive year. The annual statistics released yesterday show that the country's registered population has declined for the 4th straight year, while the average population age has risen. Min Hee-jin removed as Adore CEO. Min Hee-jin was removed as the CEO of K-pop girl group New Jeans label Adore yesterday as she strongly contested the decision. Harris and Trump agreed to rules of September presidential debate. Donald Trump says he has agreed to the rules for ABC News' September 10th debate with Kamala Harris, which will be their first encounter since she launched her presidential campaign. And these are today's headlines. It is now time for Busan Updates. Let's say hi to Haley first. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, so when you have questions about life in general, what do you do? Do you look it up or do you ask someone?
I have a chat room of 언니's that I turn to for like life advice and like Korean culture, customs, etiquette, like what would you do?
Yes.
But then for things that are factual, I can't say that, 구땡 queen. I'm a portal site. I'm a search engine queen. Yeah, I love searching. I'm seeing responses like they use the AI assistant. I don't trust him, her, it, them. Because, they have been known to make stuff up. And yeah, especially if I'm going to bring that information on air, I need sources.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to jump into our first update. This controversial apartment project near Igide has actually been scrapped altogether.
Right. So this is a plan to build an apartment complex right on or right next to the Igide Park. And that raised issues of privatizing public property, especially because there were additional plans to build and renovate a nice park area around it.
Yes.
So upon citizen outrage, the developer, which is 아이에스동서, they pulled the proposal and scrapped the plans altogether. So no apartment. So the company released a statement that it is a local company. It had its start in Busan, and regional development is a value that they hold dear. And they said that if they do come up with other plans for the property, it would be in consideration of the natural resources and public interest. By the way, the same company tried to build a cable car on the site some years ago, and those plans have been scrapped as well.
Yes.
So civic community welcomed this decision and asked for public institutions to really balance keeping private development, but at the same time, public interest in mind in their future endeavors.
Yes, indeed. All right, for our next item, we're going to talk about the state of this Telegram deepfake scandal in Busan, though.
Right. So this is, of course, a top story across the country, and it affects our city and really our backyard as well. So the Busan Office of Education confirmed that there are indeed Telegram chat rooms created in local middle and high schools with students sharing these deep fake generated explicit or pornographic content, usually of their classmates. So there are over 10 schools that are being mentioned on social media. There's a list circulating, and the authorities suspect that the actual extent may be much bigger than this because it's actually often victims who kind of come forward and say there's a content of me going around, but not everyone knows what's happening.
Sure.
So the education office is working with the local police and they have sent emergency notices to the schools and parents on how to help the victims and what to do if you find out that there is such content of yourself going around. And an investigation is underway because a high school in Saha district has at least 13 victims reported thus far.
Yes.
And they are having, however, a hard time identifying these suspects or the perpetrators because of the anonymous nature of Telegram and because those chat rooms can be deleted rather quickly.
Indeed. Such a big issue right now. All right, next up, after a very long dispute, the 백양터널 will now be toll-free.
Right, so 백양터널 that connects Sasang and Busanjin districts will be toll-free starting next year. So until then, 901 toll will apply.
Yes.
So the tunnel is currently under operation by a private developer that built the tunnel, and that's been the way since it opened back in 2000. But the contract actually runs out on January 9th of next year, at which point, starting on January 10th, Busan City will take over the operations. And actually, there was quite a bit of a dispute as to what to do with the toll. Initially, the city wanted to lower the toll from 900 to 500 won because their data showed that making the tunnel free would increase the traffic volume by about 40%. And that kind of defeats the purpose of having this express tunnel run through.
Right.
So the local council, however, as well as civic groups, demanded that the toll be free, which the city has accepted. So Mayor Park Hyung-jun announced earlier this week that the date is set to go on starting January 10th. The tunnel will be free. And Mayor Park said that both arguments on either making the toll continue or having the toll free, they had their pros and cons, but the city prioritized the people's convenience, even if it does come at a financial cost to Busan.
Right, but I hear that this isn't permanent.
Maybe. So this is kind of up in the air because there is another Baekhyang tunnel that's underway or that's in the works.
Okay.
This would be the second tunnel to expand the total lanes to 7 across both tunnels. And after this is completed in 2031, the operator for Baekhyang Tunnel number 2 will take over operations for the original tunnel as well. So at that point, they'll have to go through a whole other decision-making process on whether to make the first tunnel still free or impose tolls on that again. So at that point, the city will hold another public hearing or multiple hearings to see whether to maintain the free situation or add tolls to it.
I see. Well, for our final Busan story, we all know that Chuseong is coming up real soon, and you have some numbers on how much it may cost to put on a holiday spread.
It's coming up soon.
Yes.
Because it's hot. We don't realize that fall's coming, but it's coming at some point. So according to the Korea Price Association, it'll cost about 267,000 won, 26만 7천 원, to put on a full 추석 차례상, the memorial ritual table spread, if you shop at a traditional market.
Right.
And this is actually about 100,000 won cheaper, 10만 won cheaper than shopping at a large chain grocery store. And that price, by the way, is about 20,000 won cheaper than the national average. So that's good news. So but the thing is, while the average price, overall prices are relatively lower here in Busan, there are certain items that are priced higher than the national average. So for instance, apples, for a set of 5, Busan's prices overall are slightly higher than the national national average, along with songpyeon, the traditional rice cakes, and pork.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So maybe if you can, avoid that or search for deals or overall shop at traditional markets.
All right. Well, thank you for the updates, Haley. Now it's back to you, the waivers out there. Text topic time. When you have questions, whether it's about work, school, daily life, what do you do? Do you turn to an actual person or do you look it up basically on the internet? So 나는 일하다가 공부하다가 살다가 모르는 게 있으면 어떻게 하나요? 주변에 물어보다 versus 검색한다. While you think about that, here's your traffic and weather. It is now 7:15. Here is your traffic report. It looks slow right now on Luno Samsungdaero from Myeongji Underpass to Shinho Bridge. Also backed up on the Dongso Overpass from Hwangryong Ramp to the old Kaegum Toll Gate. It is currently 27 degrees Celsius under cloudy skies. There is some light rain coming down in some parts of the city. The rain is forecast for later on in the day with an expected high of 32. Across the nation, there is a slight drop in temperatures with a daytime high between 27 and 33 degrees across the country, and rain forecast for Gangwon and Gyeongsang, those general regions. This was your traffic and weather.
Are you an early bird? Are you up to date on the news? Are you a trendsetter? For all of the biggest issues from Busan to the world and useful information you need, right here on Morning Wave in Busan.
It's time for News Digest, and for our first story, we're going to continue our discussion on this uproar regarding Telegram deepfake sexual exploitation cases, and now the government is stepping in.
Right. So the Korea Communication Standards Commission, the KCSC, they yesterday convened an emergency meeting to address the spread of such pornographic deepfake content via Telegram. So first, the commission will put up a reporting banner on its website for deepfake cases, and it'll also create a hotline with Telegram because currently they only communicate via email, but they'll create a more expedited communication and reporting process to quickly block these contents. And then at the same time, to monitor the cases, it'll double the number of its monitoring agents. And the communication authorities will also take all action to take down the contents, including requesting police investigation as necessary. So by the way, that meeting that took place yesterday was a director level meeting, and they will convene a general meeting later today to confirm these measures.
Right.
And then moving to the education side, because unfortunately a lot of these cases are taking place within schools or among school-age students. And a police report says that of the cases that have come into them, a third of the victims are minors. So the education authorities are currently conducting surveys into the situation with the schools, and they will run reporting and counseling centers for the victims, along with special campaigns on managing your personal information online, as well as digital sexual crimes prevention. And as for President Yoon Suk-yeol, he addressed this during the cabinet meeting yesterday, and he said that these deepfake videos, which some people see as kind of harmless pranks, absolutely not. They are clear criminal acts that misuse technology behind the protection of anonymity. So he ordered for the relevant authorities to uproot these digital sexual crimes and also seek educational measures to create this healthy online and digital culture.
Right, and as this is going on, relevant bills have been basically sleeping, doing nothing at Parliament.
Right, so there was this act in the 21st National Assembly on fostering the AI industry and credibility. So this bill sought to prevent purposeful exploitation and misuse of AI technology. And how to do that? The bill kind of required creators to put these watermarks or at least metadata that can tell the viewers that this particular content was created by artificial intelligence, so it's not real. And it would also require platforms to immediately delete contents that don't have this marking but was created by AI.
I see.
So it didn't get past the committee levels at the 21st National Assembly. So some people say, critics say, had this bill been in effect, we would have prevented or at least have the tools against the current deepfake crimes.
Right.
But then this isn't a fix-all because with any regulations on technology, there are concerns that such regulations may hinder the fostering or development of said technology. And of course, that particular legislation wouldn't have applied to individuals. And it seems that a lot of the deepfake cases are made on individual levels. But still, as this is going on, experts have warned about particular fallouts of AI for a while.
Yes.
So you do have to wonder what has been done on the lawmakers level.
Not much, apparently. So that's that. So that's what's going on. This is, of course, the talk of the country right now. All right, next, we're going to talk about the polarization of housing prices across the country.
Right. So apartment prices in Seoul, we know they're notorious for high, steep home prices, but they have reached a new high in terms of polarization, meaning the price difference between the top 20% of homes and the bottom 20%. So the housing market has been fairly sluggish because of high interest rates, but demand has still been high for a particular subset of homes in specific areas or specific brands or these larger complexes. So according to KB Bank's data, the differential index between the highest 20% of homes and the lowest 20% of apartments came to 5.27, and that is the biggest difference since record-taking began in 2008. So what that means is that basically the top 20% of apartments in Seoul are 5.27 times more expensive than the bottom 20%. So basically for the price of one high-priced apartment, you can buy over 5 of the lower-priced homes. By the way, the average apartment in the top 20% of the group in Seoul cost 2.5 billion won as of this August. So that's 25억 won, and that's an increase of 6.7% in 1 year. As for the bottom 20% of apartments in Seoul, that fell by some 3% to 488 million won, so it's 4억 8천만 won.
Well, that's Seoul, obviously, which, of course, is very notorious for expensive housing. What about for the rest of the country?
Right, so that differential gap for nationwide average, the top 20% of apartments cost 1.2 billion won. That's still 12억 won, relatively expensive. Average low 20%, 116 million won, 1억 1천만 won.
Okay.
So there's still a fairly big price gap of about 10 times. So as for reasons, we still have to go back to COVID because the pandemic did create this polarization of wealth. And that polarization not only centered socioeconomic classes, but also regions with the capital area and preference over these large brand apartment complexes. So the real estate market says that the government's ongoing housing loan regulation will actually, or it might serve to only widen this gap, because when you put kind of limits or caps on housing loans and mortgages, that actually tends to affect the middle class and middle to lower classes more, because the uber rich, they don't really worry about loans and mortgages when they buy real estate, investments. Right.
Yes. So that is what's going on in terms of housing and the price of housing across the country. Let's move on and talk about the state of mental health here in Korea. What's going on?
Right. So we're talking about ulbun, this resentment or pent up anger. About half of the country is apparently in this prolonged state of pent-up anger. So this is based on a report by Seoul National University's Graduate School of Public Health run by Professor Yu Myung-sun.
Okay.
So the team surveyed over 1,000 adults this spring, having them rate their levels of pent-up anger in 3 different stages.
Okay.
By the way, various literature and experts, they define this resentment, ulbun or pent-up anger, as emotional responses to stress stress from things that one considers to be unfair, insulting, or goes against their beliefs. So the survey showed that 49.2% of the public is in this perpetual or prolonged state of pent-up anger. And 9% of the public showing serious levels of such anger. And there was a correlation between those who showed these serious emotional stages and thoughts of suicide.
Is there any type of distinctive pattern on who may feel such emotions?
Actually, yes, there was a significant pattern based on their age.
Okay.
So younger people especially in their 30s, show the highest ratio of serious levels of anger at nearly 14%. And people who considered themselves to be in low socioeconomic classes had higher ratio of pent-up anger at 60%. On the contrary, people who considered themselves to be in the upper third of the socioeconomic classes, 60% of them said that they didn't feel at least prolonged pent-up anger. So this may be because people don't perceive society or the general world as being fair, because 77.5% of the people said that in the past year, they've experienced cases of injustice or unfairness at least once, which of course that's common. But people in their 20s or 30s had the lowest score on whether they perceive the world to be fair, which does speak volumes about the state of our society. So what causes someone, what kind of unfair aspects of society may cause someone to be this angry? Corruption within politics and political parties, followed by the government's perceived corruptions and concealment, as well as the media's silence and biases. So basically, watching the news would make you have these feelings of resentment. And then this year, 2 new categories were added to these major causes. That would be tragedies from lapses in safety and tax fraud.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, so...
Wow,
right.
That is the state of affairs here today. And our news, that's a wrap. We'll check in with you in hour number 2. Thank you, Haley.
See you in a bit.
All right, well, we're due for a first song break, so here it is. This is Volare by the Gypsy Kings.
Pienso que un sueño parecido no volverá más. Y me pintaba las manos y la cara de azul. Y de provisa en el viento rápida me llevo. Y me hizo volar en el cielo infinito. Me encuentro más alto que el sol y me extraña en el mundo sale con el paso de mí. Una música dulce tocada solo para mí. Volaré, oh, cantaré, oh, oh, nel blu dipinto di blu, felice di stare lassù. Pienso que un sueño parecido no volverá más. Y me pintaba la mano y la cara de azul. Y de improviso en el viento rápido me llevó. Y me hizo ir a volar en el cielo infinito. Volaré, oh, cantaré, oh, oh, nel blu dipinto di blu. Felice di stare lassù. Volare, oh, cantare, oh, oh, nel blu dipinto di blu. Felice di stare lassù. Pienso que un sueño parecido no volverá más. Y me pintaba la mano y la cara de azul. Y de improviso en el viento rápido me llevó. Y me hice ir a volar en el cielo infinito.
Welcome back, everybody. It's now 7:29 on this hump day. Our top story, we're discussing the long-term summer climate. And now let's look at how this may affect our food supply because, yes, we need food to survive. And we're all foodies here on Morning Wave in Busan. Already, farms in South Korea are growing fruits and vegetables previously unseen here. Grown in subtropical climates or 아열대. For example, there is okra or okura, which is native to Southeast Asia normally or Africa, but now they're grown on the fields of Chungnam. Other vegetables like butternut squash and lemongrass. Oh, by the way, love lemongrass. Also growing out of greenhouses in South Korea's natural climate. I mean, stuff that normally we would have to import. But this also means that we won't be able to get our usual favorites like apples, 사과. Apple production has been traveling northward because of the warming climate, with the top production to come out of Gangwon, not Gyeongbuk, in the next 10 years. And then we have tangerines, 감귤, native to where? Jeju. And they've been making their way up north as well. Most of the southern coast will be able to grow tangerines by the year 2030. And this is definitely a stark change to the climate that we know, and one that we're going to have to adapt to quickly. Back to our text topic. So, when you wonder about something, when you have a question, whether it's related to work or school or just, daily life. Like literally, over the weekend, I was celebrating a birthday, not mine, family member's birthday, looking up restaurants. I did go on the internet, and then who did I call? I already told you, my younger sister. I was like, hey, I want this kind of place with this kind of food. This is the budget. And then so I called her and she's like, there is this thing called the internet. I said, I know, but you know better than the internet. So she did the search for me and then she found 5 places. And of the 5 places I chose, she's just so much better. So that's my go-to person. Who's your go-to person? Is it a colleague? And then my kind of follow-up question to that, how comfortable are you in sharing or asking questions to your coworkers? 자, 나는 일하다가 공부하다가 살다가 모르는 거 있으면 주변에 물어본다 versus 검색한다. 그래서 사람한테 물어본다 치고요. 특히 같이 일하시는 분, 직장인이라고 치고 같이 일하시는 분한테 뭐 어디까지 물어볼 수 있는지 그렇게 편한 사이인가요? 아니면 일 대해서만 물어본다. So that's also kind of curious about that. So looking at some of your responses, Umberto says nothing personal in the work chats. Just work questions. What's the status of the project? Have we completed this, event? Are you tracking the new customer requirements? Blah, blah, blah. So basically, he says all personal questions are in person, he says, to avoid self-incrimination. So he leaves nothing to text because he doesn't want to leave evidence behind. Oh, that's a good, I guess a bit of not just comment, maybe some advice to people. Never leave behind evidence. Tommy says, depends on what the question is. Oh, that's true also. Kind of like what area you're, I guess, asking. Anonymous waiver says, I would turn to Chat GPT than people. But just to let you guys know, you guys realize that Chat GPT is not 100%. That sometimes when it scrapes information, it scrapes also along with it fake information, right? That it's not 100% reliable. Just letting you guys know so that you don't rely on it 100%. Anyhow, I'll read more of your messages, but this for now is your hot clip. Today's hot clip I found really troubling on a personal level because I do happen to be, a female, but I think you'll find it troubling even if you're a man or a woman. The new Taliban laws in Afghanistan, well, they're already very prohibitive, but now they're prohibiting women from speaking in public at all. They don't even want their voices heard, and showing their faces outside their homes, it's been condemned. So they can't even do that. So let's listen to the clip from ABC News.
And concerns are growing over new Taliban laws banning women's voices and bare faces in public in Afghanistan. UN officials say the rules extend the, quote, already intolerable restrictions on the rights of women and girls. Those new rules come nearly 3 years after the Taliban seized control of the country in 2021 following the withdrawal of U.S. troops there. Can you walk me through your first reaction? What went through your mind when you read that the Taliban was implementing these new laws? And what are you hearing from women in Afghanistan who now cannot show their faces or utter their voices in public?
You know, we got this news 3 or 4 days ago. And of course, as it always is, when we see an edict like this, there is a frantic rush to find out, you know, what it really means. What are the provisions? How do we translate? And for our organization, how do we immediately, you know, communicate with our staff, especially our female staff, to protect their mental health and well-being? First, and second, to ensure they're able to continue coming to the office or to the sites where they need to do their work, serving other women. But what we are seeing very much in Afghanistan today, amongst women and amongst de facto authorities at various levels, are questions around the level of connection to the ideology that is being extensively promoted through the PVPV. So that's their main job, to really promote and check on ideology. The actual ability to enforce is something that we need to wait and see. However, the mental health impact is still profound. I'll tell you a story from yesterday. Even though as an organization we had gone through what the regulations mean, what they don't, how we will or will not police our own staff, still, you know, out of their own accord, a number of female staff yesterday chose to pull their brothers or fathers out of work, have them come as mahrams, accompanying them to the office, which is very humiliating. They chose to have their faces covered. And when they came to the office, you know, on one hand, you know, one started just crying from that experience. They're trying with all their might to continue to be professionals, to continue to be medical workers, continue to go to school however they can.
This topic of just prohibiting people from speaking, but particular just of whether it's men or women, a particular gender, prohibiting them from doing something like speaking. They don't want to hear women's voices in public. Not alone, you know, just they don't want to see their faces. Just more restrictive than ever. And the fact that women are having to ask their brother or father to escort them to work. And when you're at work, isn't that considered a public place? Are you able to speak? Are you able to do anything at all? Is the big question. So are they going to force it? I don't know. This was your hot clip for today.
Stay tuned. You're listening to Morning Wave in Busan.
We have Leon in the studio, and she's here for hashtag fact check. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, the good thing is it's kind of cooling down a little. You feel it, right?
Yesterday, you felt the wind right throughout the night.
No, I didn't turn on the AC.
I know. That was
It
nice.
was a nice break.
I took a walk last night as well. And then the wind and the less humidity, I felt like I could walk for hours.
Yes,
this is
so
critical.
nice. Yes. Text topic today. We're talking about when you have questions, whether it's about, just life or just questions about like which restaurant you want to go to. What do you usually do?
things.
Do you ask somebody, like turn to an actual person, or do you look it up?
I think, it depends on what I want to know.
Yes.
But I think my biggest questions when I need advice is, for me, it has to do with like social relationships or child rearing.
Okay.
It's like kind of where my struggles come from sometimes. And I go for notube for that one because there's everything on notube these days.
That's true.
And I'm kind of an introvert also. I struggle with kind of really opening up with my true struggles with even to my closest friends as well. Yeah, so I kind of, that's my first go-to because they actually have like answers to everything, like experts.
And it's helpful to you?
Experts, have their insight to basically everything. And then so that's where I spend most of the time.
On notube.
Yeah. But I feel like, as I'm saying this, I feel like I should be more human and talk to human people about my problems.
Oh, and I know you used to work, obviously. So it's a side question for everybody out there, though. For your coworkers, like, are you somebody like, do you make friends with your coworkers or not? Waivers is the side question I wanted to throw out there.
Right.
Like, 직장 다닌다 치고, like, 친구, back in the day, or for current, waivers out there. 친구 만들어요 of your coworkers, or do you tend not to? Is this just a strictly 그냥 비즈니스예요?
저는 직장 그 분들이 거의 가족처럼. They were like my friends. I think I was lucky though. I didn't have any like crazy like bad experiences or traumatic experiences to make me have that distance. But I think the biggest reason I went to work was number one was because to meet the coworkers that I really love, I connect with, and then second was work. So I tend to, I think I blur the line too much.
Oh,
but
so
I don't know how the working culture is right now these days. Though.
Well, thanks for sharing.
That was me back then.
Okay. Well, let's dive into our topic. What do you have for us today?
Yes. So, there was the recent large-scale fire in the parking garage in Cheongna district. That raised a lot of concerns about the safety of electric vehicles. And also, more recently, there was a fire of the Tesla EV as well in Yongin. And it's been pointed out that there's this, growing sense of excessive fear about EVs among consumers. And so what I want to fact check today is, should we really be worried about how dangerous these electric vehicles are at this point?
Right. So, that fire in that parking garage, it took so long to put it out. And this kind of put the fear of the fear in a lot of people.
Right.
People who own these types of cars.
Yes.
So, do these types of cars catch fire more often compared to other traditional, let's say, gasoline or diesel cars is the big question.
Yes. So compared to the internal combustion engines, like you mentioned, the fire rate is actually lower at this point. So according to data from the Korea Fire and Rescue Agency, the number of fires per 10,000 vehicles last year was 1.3 for electric vehicles and 1.9 for internal combustion engines, which is a higher rate for internal combustion engines than electric vehicles, of course. Even if you consider only underground parking lot fires, the proportion of electric vehicles is low. The report by the Seoul Fire and Disaster Management Center, there were 1,399 fires in underground parking lots in Korea from the year 2013 to 2022. Of these, 610 were caused by gasoline cars. That accounted for over 43%. And only 24 cases were started by EV batteries. So at this point, there are many. The proportion of cars in general, of course, is much lower for EV cars, but that's what the data says in terms of fires caught by on electric cars.
Yes. Well, thanks for breaking it down, but there's still this kind of belief. Probably unfounded, but this belief that that the fire in the underground parking garage was massive because the fire began from an electric vehicle rather than a regular combustion engine vehicle. But true.
Was the fire intense because it was an EV? Surprisingly enough, before I did my research, I thought, yes, it's because it was an EV.
That's what it seemed like.
That's what it seemed like. Yes. So, but looking deeper into the incident, not necessarily. In the Cheongna district of Incheon, there are both cars on either side of the Mercedes-Benz EQE electric car that was burned out. But the fire did not spread immediately to all the other cars.
Yes.
In fact, it only spread to the cars on either side initially. But after sometime the fire jumped across the parking lot, burning dozens and dozens of cars on the other side of the parking lot. And the reason why that happened is it's not that the fire started off directly from the electric vehicle, but instead the fire traveled across the hallway through the apartment's plumbing insulation, which was on the ceiling of the parking lot.
Right.
And also a lot of, there's also the malfunctioning sprinkler system that's been talked a lot about on the media as well, which is part to blame for the parking garage fire that escalated into a major blaze.
Yes.
But, there is still that argument that but still, fires caught that starts from an EV. It's so hard to put out. Isn't that true? That's what a lot of consumers are concerned about. And for that, it is true. Once an electric vehicle battery catches fire, it is prone to what's called a thermal runaway, which is, this rapid, sharp increase in its temperature.
Okay.
And this can cause the fire to continue until basically the vehicle is completely destroyed.
Okay.
And so typically internal combustion engine fires can be extinguished, within an hour. That's what we're used to. But EVs, yes, they can take up to 7 to 8 hours. But it's not impossible to extinguish the fire because that's what a lot of consumers have been saying. It's like once it's on fire, we can't put it out. It's possible only by submerging the vehicle in water or by covering the vehicle like a blanket to cut off the air completely.
Yes. And so the battery in question for this particular brand of car, the Mercedes, because it's in the news, it caught fire. People are wondering, is it because the battery was manufactured in China? I'm just going to ask the question because that's what everybody's asking, right? And that's what people are asking. That's not what I personally am asking. That's what people are asking, which may, tend to lend to that view. People think, since the battery was made in China, is it of lower quality than a battery made in, let's say, Korea?
Yes. That is a lot of concern that people are raising. I mean, that's where the battery was manufactured. Does that really matter? Well, no, not really, because, the lithium-ion batteries, whether made in China or Korea, can catch fire at any time. In fact, there was a Korean car brand electric vehicle that was equipped with a battery made by a Korean battery manufacturer, SK On, which recently caught fire in a public parking tower in Kumsan, Chungcheongbuk-do. And there was also another Korean EV car vehicle, which also had a battery from the same company, also caught fire in an accident last year. So there's definitely no data to back up the fact that, there's EV batteries that are made in a specific country, like China, is more prone to fires or not.
We don't want to jump to conclusions.
Just a growing concern. In general.
Yes. So thanks for clarifying that. Well, let's talk about this new push by the Seoul city government to restrict EV cars from being fully charged in order to prevent EV fires. This is sparking controversy.
Yes.
Does limiting the extent to which EVs are charged actually lead to a reduced chance of fire?
Yes. So there are basically two different arguments here. There's one by the Seoul city government who's saying, yes, it does reduce chance of fire, so that's why we're implementing this policy. Okay. And the EV battery manufacturers who are saying, no, not really, that's not going to do much. So let's first talk about what the Seoul metropolitan government is saying. It's basically saying that it's going to now require manufacturers of EVs to certify that they have applied like a 90% charge limit to their vehicles, to the EV vehicles upon request. The city plans to require manufacturers to increase the safety margin of electric vehicles, which is currently set to about 5% to 10% if and only requested by the owner of the EV.
Yes.
And when that's done, the manufacturers have to issue this certificate called a charge limit certificate, stating that the manufacturer of this battery has applied basically this charge limit of 90%. So the city acknowledges that there is this debate about how effective this limit, will be in preventing EV fires. But, Professor Kim Pil-soo from Daerim University says that for underground parking, the limiting charging level has actually helped reduce fires in other battery systems and suggests that these measures will improve the safety for EVs. And he also mentions examples like, global shipping companies are now requiring EV batteries to be at 30% charged or less during transport.
30%?
Right, to really reduce the chance that it could catch on fire.
I see. So let's talk about the battery makers and car companies. What are their stances on Seoul's new policy on the EV charging limits?
Yes, so what they're saying is that the EV batteries, they're already designed with the safety measures, safety margins to avoid, overcharging.
Yes.
So even when an EV battery shows in a typical EV car that it's fully charged, it's actually not at its full capacity, and they have made it that way to ensure safety.
Sure.
For example, the Korean car manufacturer Hyundai Kia says their EV batteries are built to hold more power than they're allowed to use. So there's already this built-in safety margin.
I see.
So they only use a portion of it to prevent overcharging, which means that setting an additional limit on how much the batteries can be charged really might not do much to reduce the risk of it catching fire. Batteries also come with safety systems that manage how they charge and prevent overcharging. So some car manufacturers say that the battery cells already has this software system to avoid issues like overcharging. But despite these points by car manufacturers, Seoul is moving forward with this policy to limit how much, the EVs will be charged, again, to reduce the risk of fires and, also address all these EV owners and other residents' concerns as well.
Yes.
But some EV owners are saying, that's not fair because, again, this obviously means they're going to have to charge more often their cars when they're going on travel.
Yes.
Right.
The inconvenience of that.
Yes.
But thank you for addressing this because this is of major concern. There's an increasing number of people that are choosing to go EV in their purchases, right? For their cars.
Right.
Well, thank you. And we will definitely check in with you next week to check on some more. Well, are they fact or not? We're going to find out next week, right?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Leon.
Okay, bye-bye.
We have more coming up in hour number 2, including our special interview. I can't wait for this one. The do's and don'ts of ghosting. ghosting. 근데 이거는 귀신 얘기 아니에요. It means 잠수타다. 이별을 어떻게 아름다운 이별이라는 게 있을까요? 잠수 이별? The right way, the do's and don'ts, the ins and outs of that. That's coming up with our expert in hour number 2. Stay tuned for that. In the meantime, here is The Phoenix by Fall Out Boy. Enjoy. I'll be back at 8.
Take it back. You know time crawls on when you're waiting for the song to start. So dance alone to the beat of your heart. Hey, young blood, doesn't it feel like our time is running out? I'm gonna change you like a remix, then I'll raise you like a phoenix, wearing authentic misery. No, I'll make it look a little better on me. Take it back. You know time crawls on when you're waiting for the song to start. So dance alone to the beat of your heart. Hey, young blood, doesn't it feel like our time is running out? I'm gonna change you like a remix, then I'll raise
images, aggressively hunting down those who produce and spread such images, especially those of children and teenagers. The National Police Agency said that, according to the police agency, 297 cases of deepfake sexual exploitation crimes were reported nationwide from January and July. Among 178 people charged, 73.6% or 113 individuals were known to be teenagers. Political parties and rights groups also call for stern punishment and an active investigation as the cases stoked fear that any woman or girl could fall victim to such exploitation. South Korea's population continues to shrink for fourth consecutive year. The annual statistics yearbook released yesterday showed that the country's registered population has declined for the fourth straight year, while the average population age has risen. The Ministry of the Interior and Safety put data that the country's population as 51,325,329 as of the end of last year, a decrease of 0.22% from the year before. Single-person households rose, with those in their 60s and 70s accounting for over 38% of the total. In further sign of the country's aging society, the average age increased to 44.8 years. Min Hee-jin removed as Adore CEO. Min Hee-jin was removed as the CEO of K-pop girl group NewJeans' label Adore yesterday, with board director Kim Joo-young appointed as the new CEO. Kim will remain on the company's board of directors and continue to produce music for NewJeans, thereby separating Adore's production and management. Min, however, strongly contested the decision, claiming that the unilateral dismissal was made against her will. Harris and Trump agreed to rules of September presidential debate. Donald Trump says he has agreed to the rules for ABC News' September 10th debate with Kamala Harris, which will be their first encounter since she launched her presidential campaign. The two campaigns have reportedly been at odds over the rules of the debate, with the biggest point of contention being whether the candidates' microphones would be muted when the other candidate was talking. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said that the debate will be held under CNN's rules from his and Joe Biden's debate, which seems to indicate microphones will be muted when a candidate is not speaking. And this was News Highlights. It's time for Waggle Waggle. We have Haley back in the studio.
Hello, hello.
All right, first, let's talk about the president's nominee for labor minister, which has made who has made some controversial comments, both in the past and during his confirmation hearing.
Right, so he kind of doubled down on his past comments in the confirmation hearing that was held earlier this week. So we're talking about Kim Moon-soo, and we did talk about him before after he was initially tapped as the labor minister. But he defended and stood by his past comments during the parliamentary hearing. For one, he denied that there was the nation of Korea during the Japanese occupation period, reiterating his comment made back in 2018. So he stated that he stands by his views that the country was founded on August 15th of 1948. Which would be 3 years after liberation, and also 39 years after the foundation of the provisional government, which many historians see as the true founding of the country. So this kind of is viewed as being in denial of the independence movement. And Kim Moon-soo also said that everyone in Korea living in Korea at the time were Japanese national during the occupation period, and he actually got angry during the confirmation hearing and said that anyone who argues otherwise, saying that Koreans were Korean nationals, are out of common sense.
Okay.
Yeah. So
He also made some comments about more contemporary history as well, right?
So this goes back to the former impeached 박근혜 administration.
Yes.
And he stated that the impeachment of ex-President Park was wrong and that history will judge it. And Kim also said that he knows Park personally and said that, quote, she knows nothing about bribery and she is not a person who would accept bribery, which goes against many courts' rulings all the way through the Supreme Court. He was also bombarded with questions from opposition lawmakers on when he previously called the Silver tragedy and the subsequent protest, quote, shamanistic exorcism of death. That's what he said. And he called the Sangyong Labor Union a suicide mission. So he stated that he apologizes, kind of issued a blanket apology for anyone who was harmed or hurt by his comment, but did not specifically, actually apologize for any specifics. So yeah, that's once again the labor minister nominee.
Okay.
We can't comment.
Next story goes in line with today's topic. Who do people ask when they have questions about something? Who do they turn to?
Well, I turn to humans and I stand by. I'm a small talk queen. I will share personal information whether you want to hear it or not. And I will never shut up on our YouTube chat. But when you ask Gen Zers, AI. That's who they turn to. Right.
Really?
And we had, one person or one or two people say AI. But yeah, I guess we have to get younger people in our listenership. So this is actually based on the Samsung Electronics survey on Gen Z workers across South Korea, the US, UK, France, and Germany. So a fairly extensive survey. So there was a strong preference for artificial intelligence as one's first go-to source when Gen Z workers needed work-related help. How much of a strong preference? 80% of South Korean Gen Z workers turn to AI as their first source, which is really interesting. That's a high number. That's the vast majority.
Yes.
So that's significantly higher than, for example, Germany, which had 60% of its workers respond. They went to AI first. Similar in the UK, US, and France, both in the mid-50s. So about half or a little bit over half. And then these figures were similar in how younger people perceived artificial intelligence, which means 80% of young Korean workers thought that AI could improve their work. But this also led to highest levels of stresses because there are just way too many AI-related apps. So there's just way too much for them to kind of catch up on and stay consistent with. So experts there showed that Korean Gen Zs were the most sensitive to changes in the AI field. But then at the same time, this meant that they were the most open and positive on how this technology could change their work.
Oh, so how are they? How were they using these AI tools? I'm curious.
And this goes back to kind of an issue that we consistently talk about, like the lack of literacy skills amongst young people, that they refuse to read anything that goes beyond like a paragraph. So they use AI to fix that issue. They ask AI to summarize long articles, reports, and meeting minutes. And then also generating text and or visual contents, and then also using them as assistants for research.
Okay.
So the report actually showed that you classify people into 3 different types based on how willing they are to accept AI. So number 1 was AI super users who will use the AI chatbots for many things.
Okay.
And there was a strong correlation. If they had second jobs, moonlighting, these would be content creators and web developers on top of their day job. And then second category was AI experimenters who used AI for practical reasons related to their work. And finally, AI cautionaries who value stability in their work as well as their income. So they wouldn't really go out and become content creators and seek second jobs if they did. That had nothing to do with digital content.
Interesting.
So I fall in the third category. Yeah.
Super users, experimenters, and cautionaries.
/ skeptics. Yeah.
And then we have a message. 태진 says, 우리 젊었을 때는 그 초록색 검색 창 찾고 물어봤는데. So it's a whole different generation.
It is.
It's like
I still use that green portal
green
site
portal
/
site,
the G portal site.
The multicolored one,
right.
the G
the
thing.
search engine. Yeah.
I still use that. I guess we are, What's your excuse?
I'm a millennial. I'm not Gen Z. I can't wait until I'm 80 and I can shout at clouds.
And the thing is, I heard that Gen Zs, they don't like being clumped with the M's.
They don't. I mean, no wonder. They're like line, don't cross it.
Right.
Yeah,
Don't clump us together, they say. All right, next. The country with the world's highest gambling rate is trying to curb this practice. I'm so curious.
So what do you think? I mean, you might think
I always thought it was somewhere in Asia.
Oh.
That's kind of the bias I have. Because every time I went to Las Vegas,
they're all Asians. The customers are Asians.
We would, like, my family and I, we would go enjoy. We would go to bed like at a decent hour, and we would wake up and we would see the same people.
Just like red-eyed and like feeding coins to slot machines,
or at the tables.
That might be because a lot of Asian countries ban gambling, so it's their only
that's
opportunity.
Their only way. Maybe that's
but
why.
the country is Australia.
Really? Okay.
Gambling or betting is legal and huge. So this was how huge? Well, Australia was the first country to deregulate gambling back in the 80s. And they have slot machines legally in pubs and clubs as well.
Yes.
So Australia only accounts for 0.33% of the world population. It has 20% of all of the world's slot machines in the country.
Wow.
Right.
That's
so
a lot.
Online betting, and now that we're in the 21st century, online betting and gambling also extremely common. Australians spend about $25 billion on legal gambling every year, which is a huge source of, revenue for taxes.
Yes.
But then this also leads to problems because gambling is an addiction and, of course, it can have heavy ramifications. So about 38% of its population gambles weekly. 90% of adults and 75% of children see gambling as a normal sport. But then it does have, it triggers receptors in your brain to become addictive.
Yes.
So there's been a movement to change that because gambling can destroy people financially, physically, emotionally.
Sure.
But then it's a tricky balance because the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, is seeking to potentially limit, at least first going with advertisements on gambling on public broadcasters. But then there's a concern because it is a source of huge tax revenue. Then what if people just go overseas and gamble elsewhere? Then the government will be losing out on tax revenue. And also the debate has spurred accusations that corporate interests about taxes, money, casinos are standing in the way of kind of common sense reform.
And even Leslie thought, she has a comment. She thought it was weird that when she went to Jeju and stayed at Ding Ding that there was a casino, but Koreans couldn't go in, only international visitors.
Yes, so there is a casino here in Busan as well. Only international national overseas
non-Koreans.
Non-Koreans. That's a hard word of saying non-Koreans.
Yeah.
There is like a casino in Gangwon.
That's the only
legal
casino that I know of.
Horror stories about people who live there.
Because there's this whole idea, the Korean government, the people don't want people to get addicted to gambling.
Yes.
Because look what is happening here. Yes. This is one example. Love Australia, not saying anything about,
we
the
want people.
Yes.
And Australia, so and we want people there to be in sound fiscal and fiscal health. Yeah.
Yes, but this is eye-opening. I didn't know. Right.
Things you learn.
All right, lastly, today is a big day as the 2024 Paris Paralympic Games. They're opening today?
They are opening today. Cue signal. Do.
Okay, no signal.
Yeah, no signal.
Okay.
Sorry.
Somebody forgot.
4,000 para-athletes from 182 nations will compete across 22 categories in the 2024 Paralympics. By the way, a bit of etymology because nerd. Previously, Paralympics were a portmanteau combination of paraplegia, which is 하반신마비, plus the Olympics. But then in 1989, the para has switched to stand for parallel, so similar or equal to.
Going along together.
Right, yes. So the first Paralympics took place in 1948, 3 years after the end of World War II, when veterans who lost limbs in the war or they trained and competed in wheelchairs, the very first sport was archery. Yeah. So the opening ceremony for this year, 2024, takes place at 3 a.m. tomorrow morning. So if you want to be an early bird or
Stay
just
up late.
stay up late for that. That's 3 a.m. Across the Arc de Triomphe and Champs-Élysées. So South Korea, for its part, we have dispatched an 83-person delegation of athletes across 17 sports. The goal is to win 5 golds and be in the top 20.
Yes. And there are some astounding stories of athletes from all around the world, though.
Right, because it's not just, a feat of physical endeavor, but also usually stories, very inspirational stories of people who have had to overcome their various disabilities,
Yes.
whether that be genetic, they're born with it, or they gained it later in life.
Right.
So first is American swimmer Allie Truitt. She had been a successful swimmer at Yale. And then she graduated and she was snorkeling off the coast of Turks and Caicos with her friend when she was bitten by a shark.
Oh, no.
Right. So she fought back, but the shark had bitten off her foot and a part of her leg. So she and her friend had to swim for their lives back to the boat that was about 75 meters away.
Right.
She was airlifted to a hospital, but she had to get her leg amputated below the knee. So, and this is painful for someone who had been active, an elite athlete all her life. But then during rehab, she connected with highly decorated para swimmer Jessica Long, and she helped Truitt get back into the water and become a competitive swimmer, so a para athlete. And this is what she said regarding her experience. Quote, I'm unique in that I was attacked by a shark, but I'm not unique in that we all go through hardship and trauma and tough times in life, but that we all have the capacity to rise back up.
So inspiring.
Right. One more story of inspiration, if you'll allow me. So we have archer Sheetal Devi from India. She was born with a condition called phocomelia, which is a rare congenital disorder. So she was born without arms, both of them. She was born in a small Indian village. Did not see a bow and arrow until she was at the age of 15, at which point she met this coach and her life changed. So she has had to use her feet for most of her activities all her life. So she uses her feet and her mouth to shoot arrows.
I'm looking at the photo on our YouTube channel and I'm so amazed because at first I was like, I've gone to one of those sports and leisure,
the archery compounds.
It's tough. It's really difficult.
Stiff.
I was like shaking, trying to just shoot off one arrow.
Right.
It's
And
really,
of
really
course,
tough.
professional athletes make it look so easy, but it's not. So her coach actually, to that point, they had to create a customized bow from locally sourced materials because her family, she's from a small village, couldn't afford one. So they just made one for her.
Sure.
She is currently ranked number 1 in women's para archery. Also, another quote from her. She says, I believe that no one has any limitations. It's just about wanting something enough and working as hard as you can. And if I can do it, anyone else can. So definitely not just, sporting event, but
I love
life
this.
lesson.
We need this on a Wednesday on a hump day to get
really
us
do.
over that
Really
hump.
do.
Thank you for ending it on a very positive note, and we'll check in with you tomorrow. Thank you, Haley.
Have a great day.
All right. Now to you, the waivers. It's time for your updated traffic and weather. It is now 8:20, and it's looking quite slow on Gwangan Bridge right now, all the way to the Taeyeon overpass. It's also backed up on Byeonglo from the Taeyeon ramp to the Gwangan tunnel. Also congested on Chungjang-daero from the customs 3-way intersection to pier number 4. It is currently 27. It's kind of cloudy out there right now. Rain is forecast for later on in the day with an expected high of 32 degrees. There is a slight drop in the temperatures with daytime highs between 27 and 33 degrees Celsius across the country. Rain is forecast for the Gangwon and Gyeongsang regions. This was your traffic and weather. How about this one? It ain't no mountain high enough, but this is by Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell.
Ain't no mountain high, ain't no valley low, ain't no river wide enough, baby.
If you need me, call me, no matter where you are, no matter how far.
Don't worry, baby.
Just call my name, I'll be there in a hurry. You don't have to worry, 'cause baby, there ain't no mountain high
right, it's now 8:23, and we've been talking about when you have questions, like who do you turn to? So as Haley mentioned in Wa글와글, apparently depending on where you are in life, not always. I mean, I don't want to, just say, only Gen Zers, turn to ChatGPT or AI or things like that. But it kind of does go along, age lines, generally speaking. So I do see other people turning to friends, depending on, many of you said this, it depends on the topic. So for personal things, it seems like many of you say you turn to friends, but for other things, many of you turn to the internet. The internet, though, that's like an all-inclusive term. It can be whether it's a search engine, whether it is for AI these days. But I do want to say one thing. I'm not a skeptic to the point where I don't want you to depend on AI, but I just want you to realize that, not always is it 100% accurate. So I just wanted to add that because even with ChatGPT, all the experts say it's scraping up all that information and there is misinformation out there. So I don't want you to think that it's always 100% correct. So make sure you check multiple sources before you take it at face value is probably kind of the advice that I would like to dole out today. And even though, you didn't ask for my advice, I'm still going to, dish it out there. All right. We're going to get to our special interview. I can't wait for this topic. I'll be back in just a moment. Dating. It can be really hard. We all know that. But have you ever ghosted someone? Or maybe you've been ghosted. Or maybe even ghosted a friend. Our Korean listeners may be more familiar with the term 잠수 타다 or 잠수 이별. It has emerged as a controversial and increasingly common phenomenon in modern relationships, mainly with the rise of internet dating and dating apps. And while most of us with similar moral compasses understand that this may not be the best way to break up with someone, sometimes it can be a safer option. So when is it okay and not okay to basically poof and disappear on someone? We have invited Dr. Richard Slatcher, who is the Gail M. Williamson Distinguished Professor in the Department of Psychology at the University of Georgia. That's in the U.S. Let's say hi to him now. Hi, welcome to our program.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. So first of all, Professor, how would you define ghosting? What would you say?
So, I mean, in the simplest terms, it's ending a relationship, however brief it might be, by just ceasing communication. So to the other person, it just comes out of the blue and feels really hurtful. To the person doing it, sometimes they don't even really know that they're doing it. And sometimes they might not be doing it because of differences in perception. And what I mean by that is that sometimes, a person has made it clear that, kind of this is over and, they're not interested. And then they stop communicating, but then the person will come back and ask, why not, blah, 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 and then they'll make several attempts to try to re-engage the communication, and then they won't hear back from the person. So they might call that ghosting. The person doing the ghosting there might not. But generally, yeah, it's ceasing communication, and we're primarily talking about texting and electronic communication via apps like Hinge and Tinder, and I'm not sure what the big ones are in South Korea, but
right, Professor. So, how prevalent of an issue has it become in modern day relationships, you think? Because, as you say, with all these different apps, we're constantly on our phones. There's a lot of communication going on with devices. Versus how it's been in past decades, where a lot of it was, even talking on the phone or in person, correct?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, as you kind of alluded in your introduction, it's really more of a feature than it is a bug of modern communication. I was thinking about this before I interviewed, but if you look back, let's say 20 years ago, before the iPhone, when the only people texting back and forth were using flip phones, the only way you would really talk to somebody is going to be either in person or on the phone, right? So because it's become so easy to just have these little snippets of conversation with people, whether it be via text or on an app, it just means that we're able to maintain lots and lots of superficial kinds of relationships with various people, whether they be acquaintances or people that you might be interested in dating. So it just makes it much easier, and it's also not face to face. It's not even voice to voice. So it's easier when using text. It almost in some ways dehumanizes people because you don't feel like you're actually hurting somebody. Whereas if you actually said, something to their face, why you're breaking up with them, or on the phone, it would probably feel a lot more difficult from the person who's doing the dumping.
Right, but if you're on the receiving end of the ghosting, it can be very hurtful, can it not?
Absolutely. We've done some research where we follow people over about a week of time, and we look at how they respond to being ghosted or just being broken up with by somebody. And so initially, for a couple of days, the people who were directly broken up with, they are having a lot more negative emotions. But then after the person who's been ghosted, after a day or two realizes that they are being ghosted, their negative emotions go as high or higher than the person who was directly broken up with. But the reality is that being broken up with, or stopping communication, whatever the channel, is going to be hurtful. Yes. And people also don't sort of think about how hurtful it might have been had that person said why they are breaking up with you.
And so why do you think people choose to ghost others rather than provide a clear explanation for ending a relationship or a connection, however short that relationship might have been? Do you think that it's kind of an avoidance mechanism, or what do you think it is?
For sure. I think people by and large are pretty avoidant of conflict. And so, in one word, it's easy. It's just much easier to avoid getting into the details of why you don't want to be talking to them anymore, why you don't want to be communicating with them anymore. And, you had said, sort of however short that relationship is, but the reality is that in most of the cases, the vast majority of the cases, these are in really short, and I put quotes around this word, relationships, because the most common place that it takes place are on dating apps where, a person might be communicating with several people that they might be potentially interested in dating. Yes. And then, if it just sort of takes a weird turn or a scary turn, let's say, the one person might cease communication. I see. So it's really, I think, a function of the superficiality. It's deemed much less acceptable by people in longer term relationships.
So you kind of did allude to it just a little while ago, Professor, but in what kind of situation might ghosting be okay or even necessary? In a situation where you might actually feel like, oh, this is not okay. This is it's feeling a little weird or maybe even dangerous.
Yeah, I think actually that's exactly when I think most people would say it's okay. I'm hesitant to ever recommend ghosting, but when you ask people in psychology research studies whether it's in general acceptable to ghost, they almost always say pretty much never. But when you dig into it a little bit, it's in those instances that you just said, actually, when the person's just kind of weird and you don't know how to deal with them, or maybe they've gotten really aggressive.
Sure.
Or maybe, the person who's doing the ghosting really doesn't want to hurt the other person's feelings, that by being honest, saying, why they want to cease communication, it might be more hurtful than, in the long run, than just stopping communication. That one's a little bit more of a gray area as to whether or not it's okay. I mean, it really is going to depend upon, I think, the situation. One of the interesting things from my standpoint is that when you look at who is doing the ghosting, it's much more common actually among women ghosting men. And so I think part of that might get into this. Well, one thing, I think women are contacted much more often on dating apps than men are contacted by women.
I see.
So that's part of it. The other thing is I think this sort of cautiousness and fear about lack of safety, and so I think things can escalate pretty quickly on these apps, and so just getting out of that situation is pretty understandable.
Well, what do you think is worse, in your personal opinion, professional opinion, saying to somebody up front, you know what, I'm just not into you, versus ghosting them? I mean,
that's a really tough question to answer, right? Because they both are pretty, will make you feel pretty bad. Yeah, pretty bad, right?
Right, but
what I mean? Because what happens is What's that?
People might say, well, it's bad to ghost others, but then if you want to be upfront with somebody and say, I'm just not that into you, or lie and say it's not you, it's me, that old line.
That's right, and then that could lead. What I think can often happen to that with that is, okay, the person says, I'm not that into you. Do you think the other person's like, oh, okay, bye? Like, usually it's like, well, why? Right?
Yes,
so that elicits a lot more follow-up questions. And then it's like, okay, I'm just not that into you. She's just not that into you, Right. So I think maybe part of the avoidance is that, just not wanting to sort of go into it. And the farther you get into it, the more specific you get, potentially can be even more hurtful.
That's such a tough one. So what advice would you offer to people who are contemplating, who are kind of on the fence? Like I just said, whether it's better to be honest with that someone that they want to break things off with, or to ghost them or not. How do we balance this? Because you don't want to hurt someone's feelings, but you're going to have to, either which way, whether you choose to ghost them or to say, hey, I just don't want to be with you. How do you make the right decision on how to end things?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the interesting things here is that people don't often report that they are ghosting. People don't realize that they are ghosting, So I would start by saying, just think about whether you are ghosting someone. That's sort of the first step. I think this is often just an automatic sort of unconscious thing that people are doing when they stop communication. They're not thinking about what might the implication of this be. So when people are doing it, I would say, what is going to, presumably most people are not wanting to hurt another person. Let's put aside those cases where somebody might feel unsafe, or the other person gets hostile or something.
Okay.
But in most sort of normal kinds of, situations where the interactions have been relatively pleasant, you want to think about what's going to be more hurtful to the other person. Just stopping communicating. I think probably being direct and saying, this isn't really working out. It's nice knowing you, but, and sort of leaving it at that. And then if they continue asking follow-up questions, I'm not sure you're really, you don't owe them additional explanations. Now, if you've been together for a longer period of time, that's a different story, right?
Yes. Such a difficult balancing act, especially in this day and age where, there's a lot of dating going on with dating apps. And of course, there's always that issue whether, they're creeping you out to a certain extent, or as some of our listeners are they're texting in furiously right now, and people even mentioning an unhealthy romantic relationships or even dating violence, whether they feel like it could escalate to something like that. Those are all really, really tough issues to deal with in today's modern dating world, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I do want to thank you so much for joining our conversation and, of course, sharing your expertise with our listeners today. We do appreciate it.
It's really a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, everybody. This was Dr. Richard Slatcher. We talked about the do's and don'ts of ghosting, and we have so many comments about this topic with various opinions of whether it's still okay or not okay to do so, and people with their personal experiences. Very interesting to read about. So this was your special interview, but let's remind each other of the thing. The most important thing is to, I think, number one, try not to hurt someone else's feelings, but also, on the other hand, if you're feeling unsafe, as the professor said, if you're in that situation, it might be okay to ghost somebody if you're feeling unsafe. And this was your special interview. Let's get to our song. This is Cruel Summer, and this is by Taylor Swift.
Fever dream high in the quiet of the night. You know that I caught it. Bad boy, shiny toy with a price. You know that I bought it. Killing me slow, out the window. I'm always waiting for you to be waiting below. Devils roll the dice, angels roll their eyes. What doesn't kill me makes me want you more. And it's blue, the shape of your body is blue. The feeling I got it is it's a cruel summer. It's cool, that's what I tell 'em. No rules, unbreakable heaven, but machine, I'm not dying. We say that we'll just screw it up in these trying times. We're not trying. So cut the headlights, summer's a knife. I'm always waiting for you just to cut to the bone. Devils roll the dice, angels roll their eyes. And if I bleed, you'll be the last to know. Oh, it's blue, the shape of your body is blue. The feeling I got it is it's a cruel summer. It's cool, that's what I tell 'em. No rules, unbreakable heaven, but it's a cruel summer with you. I'm drunk in the back of the car, and I cried like a baby coming home from the bar. Said I'm fine, but it wasn't true. I don't wanna keep secrets just to keep you. And I snuck in through the garden gate every night that summer just to steal my fate. Then I scream for whatever it's worth. I love you, ain't that the worst thing you ever heard? He looks so pretty like a devil. It's blue, the shape of your body is blue. The feeling I got it is it's a cruel summer. It's cool, that's what I tell 'em. No rules, unbreakable heaven, but it's a cruel summer. I'm drunk in the back of the car, and I cried like a baby coming home from the bar. Said I'm fine, but it wasn't true. I don't wanna keep secrets just to keep you. And I snuck in through the garden gate every night that summer just to steal my fate. Then I scream for whatever it's worth. I love you, ain't that the worst thing you ever heard?
Get your local up-to-date news from Korea and abroad right here on Morning Wave in Busan with Catherine. Stay tuned.
It is now time for Skills 101. We have Jennifer in the studio.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. That was such a popular and fun topic.
It was
you guys talked
ghosting.
about,
People are
right?
still chatting away.
I should have chosen that topic for myself.
No, because I'm so surprised because many people how shall I say it? Many people are married. Not all. Many of our listeners are married. Majority.
Yeah.
And now they're 서로 일러 바치는 거. I was reading through the messages and they're like, I can't. 고수는 사귀면 결혼해야 된다 그러고 뭐 서로 손만 잡아도 뭐 아이가 생긴다 그러고 what are you guys talking about? But I'm glad people are enjoying the program.
Makes
and
the morning
chiming
very
in.
lively.
Yes. And so
feels like autumn.
Everybody's mentioning
yeah.
as of yesterday.
Yeah.
Suddenly. We feel the wind a little bit.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it.
I'm so ready for summer to be over. All right, what is our topic for today?
Okay, today's topic is something I think many of us may find a little bit unfamiliar. This is microaggressions. It's not a word we use every day. It's something that happens a lot in our daily interactions. In Korean, we could translate it as 미세공격, meaning a subtle or slight attack, though it's often unintentional. It's not meant to be. Yeah.
Yes. Microaggression. So we've probably heard of the terms a few times, but to get a better understanding of this, it's very subtle, right?
Yeah,
it's not straight up 그냥 공격이 아니라 very, very. That's why in front there's micro.
Yes.
Not just aggression, but microaggression. So can you kind of go over, make it clearer for our listeners?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Microaggressions are those small, often unintentional comments or actions that while they may seem harmless on the surface, can actually carry a hidden meaning or assumption that's hurtful. These remarks usually reflect biases or stereotypes about someone's identity, like their race, gender, age, or even educational background.
Yes. Excuse me, I had something caught in my throat. So when someone says, for example, oh, you're so articulate, but to somebody of let's say somebody of a different race, it's not necessarily a compliment, right? It means okay, you speak well, but for somebody of your race.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
right. Exactly. Or even something like asking someone, where are you really from? It can make the person feel like that person doesn't belong here, even if they've lived in the country their entire life.
That's a common one that people hear in the U.S. Because in the U.S. people look very different.
Yeah.
People are oh, so where are you from? So some people might be asking where you're from. I'm from LA, and they're oh, really? Where in? They say where in LA, so that means which neighborhood in LA.
Yeah.
Or some people, if they say where are you really from,
Yeah.
if they ask twice, they're being racist.
Yeah.
Yes, right, they are.
Yeah.
So another example might be when a woman in a professional setting is complimented on how nice she looks, rather than being recognized on her work contributions. Or I don't like this.
No, imagine you have given a really wonderful presentation,
right?
And you're commenting on your look instead of your speech. Oh,
I let's say I made a PPT. And I worked day and night on it. And then I gave a presentation, and then they comment on, your hair looks nice. But what about my PPT? I worked on it for 48 hours, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That can be quite frustrating. Yeah. Or even comments about your age, saying, you're too young to understand, you're still so young, to someone who's perfectly capable or experienced in their field.
Yes.
It might seem harmless, but it can make the person feel overlooked or underestimated because of their age.
That's true. That is true. Or sometimes, maybe somebody with a disability might experience a microaggression when others act like overly surprised.
Oh, yeah.
Like
That
oh
happens.
my gosh, like you're so good at this, or you're independent. You're kind of belittling what they're capable of.
Of course,
Right.
yeah, that happens.
Something like that. And so you
yeah,
have to
the
be
good
careful.
example. Yeah, microaggressions can show up in many ways, and it's important to be mindful whether it's about race, gender, age, ability, or other factors. They might seem small, but they can have a lasting impact and even destroy your relationship with someone.
And I can definitely see how these kind of comments and actions, they can build up and really wear someone down over time. So how do we handle these types of situations? Like both if we're on the receiving end and also if we realize we're kind of on the giving end, like we've made those kind of comments.
Yeah, everybody makes mistakes, right? If you're on the receiving end, one thing you can do is take a moment to reflect before responding. Sometimes a calm, non-confrontational approach works best. For example, you could say something like, "Oh, I know you didn't mean anything by it, but that comment felt a bit off because," and then explain why it was hurtful or upsetting or inappropriate. Yeah.
Okay. So it can open up conversation without making the other person feel kind of like, I guess, defensive. But what if we are the ones who are unintentionally saying stuff like that, like being offensive or careless?
Yeah, we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
The key is to own it. You can say something like, "I didn't mean to offend, but I can see how my words were inconsiderate or inappropriate. Thank you for pointing it out," and being open to feedback and ready to apologize. Ready to apologize it right away, and that's very important. And don't say you're like things like, "Oh, you're too sensitive." You know?
Oh, you're too sensitive.
Yeah. What's wrong? Are you in a bad mood? You know?
We have some comments from our listeners. 토리님, 이런 거요. 사투리 안 쓰게 생겼는데 잘 쓰네. 사투리 해봐 귀엽다. Yeah, that's a microaggression.
That
I think that's an example.
Yeah, example. That's a good example.
Right.
Yeah, and if you say like that kind of thing over and over again, that can get quite annoying, right?
Oh, I have one. A true with the 사투리. They asked Rachel. They said, "Oh, pronounced." This is true story. They said, "Oh, how do you say Monday and Thursday in Korean?" The true story. And she said, "월요일." And 목요일, and she said, "Why?" And they said, "Oh, we thought you were gonna say 월요일 and 목요일, like." And so my daughter was so annoyed, like she was so annoyed.
Oh, that's rude.
Yeah, and then so she's like, "Oh, well," and then she turned it on. She has an on and off switch. She can speak in so-called standard Korean, and she can speak in so-called Busan dialect, and she can turn on her native English, right? So she turned it on, and they just shut up. After that, they were like, they didn't bother her anymore. But like, she was really annoyed, and that's a microaggression. She was just like, I ain't having that.
Yeah, I actually had a situation like that recently, and after a conversation with a friend, I started wondering if I had said something that might have come across the wrong way, even though it was unintentional.
Yes,
like it was not something like that.
Right.
Yeah. So later, I reached out and asked, "Hey, I hope I didn't offend you with what I said earlier. How did you feel? Did I make you feel upset?" And she said, "Oh no, not at all." And,
okay.
But it was just really comforting and great to have an open discussion. Yeah, just to let it all out.
Right. So, I don't know. Have you ever been in a situation though where like, you know, someone says something and then like you didn't feel comfortable? Like should you speak up? Should you stand up for yourself? And like how do you handle situations like that?
There's always dilemma, right?
Because you feel kind of uncomfortable and you want to say something, but you don't want to come across as like, you know, that person.
You don't want to be aggressive.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
We've all been there. It's hard to know in the moment whether to address it or let it slide, especially when the person didn't mean any harm or the person is much older than you in Korea. Yeah.
Yes.
I think a lot of us end up just staying quiet because we don't want to make things awkward or seem like we are overreacting. But it's important to remember that your feelings are valid.
That's right.
In situations like this, one approach could be to take a moment to process what was said. And then if you feel comfortable, you might address it later by saying something like, hey, when you said this, it didn't sit right with me. And then here's why. And give a simple explanation. It's a way to open up the conversation without making the person feel defensive or embarrassed.
Sure.
Casually, not too seriously.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is a great opportunity for us to kind of reflect on our maybe microaggressions on other people.
Yeah.
Not just on the receiving end, but also on the giving end. Maybe I've said stuff without even thinking. And maybe we should think about it.
And also facial expressions as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. And things like saying like comments. Oh, you look so good for your age.
Oh, I hate that.
Why do you have to say your age at the end? Right? 나이에 비해서 너무 해요. 왜 나이를 꼭 비해서 that when you think about it, is that really that's a backhanded compliment, but it makes you feel bad.
Something like, nobody would think you have 2 kids or 3 kids.
But then on the other hand, Leslie, she says, I will always take you are too young to have an adult daughter. So she doesn't mind that. For her, it's okay. But for other people, it's kind of 꼭 그렇게 나이를 막 비유까지 하면서 they might take it as a microaggression. So yes.
Yeah, we see it a lot, even in magazines or newspaper, microaggressions.
Yes. Well, I think we can be mindful of all of this. So thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Oh, thank you.
All right, Jennifer. Everybody, this was Skills 101, and she'll be back next week with more. And it is time to wrap things up for today on this hump day. So thank you for tuning in. And of course, I love all the chatting going on. I do. So here is our final song, Let There Be Love by Oasis. Have a good one. Bye, everybody.
Who kicked a hole in the sky so the heavens would cry over me? Who stole